Begin Part 3. Ryn, Tenica, and Vasil stood at the gantry overlooking the Acre as techs busied themselves fixing the bent landing strut. The imposing elemental did a lot of listening and observing, only asking the occasional question of the captain and her Mechwarrior. "Who is funding your expedition?" Vasil asked, still looking out at the dropship. "We have various backers, but two main ones. There's a combined scientific arm that's mainly interested in procuring resources lost to time and technology, and our other backer," Ryn pauses before continuing, "is the new Ill Clan." Vasil sighed deeply, and Ryn looked up to see the slight shift towards frustration on his face. His jaw rolled slightly, grinding his teeth. Ryn felt the need to qualify it by adding, "But we're operating largely independently. It's about science and bettering humanity, not enabling conquest or getting involved in petty politics. It's dangerous out here in the periphery. Besides, your ferocious eagle here, who will keep you alive?" Vasil said, looking down at Tenica, who in turn looked down at the blue eagle on her exposed forearm. Clanners weren't known for their subterfuge, so Ryn weighed her options, made the call, and decided that Vasil wasn't a threat. She said, "We have a lance of lights to heavy mechs and a couple of aerospace fighters, plus we plan on keeping a pretty low profile." "As I can see," Vasil said, nodding toward the worn mule dropship. "How did you end up out here instead of with the rest of your clan?" Tenica asked. "It's a long story, but the end is that I am deemed not sufficiently eager to participate in the conquest of Terra," Vasil said in a calm and even tone. Tenica countered, "What does that mean?" "I was a Falcon warrior for several years before Malvina rose to power. I saw how things changed for the clan, how words were twisted and honor bent to meet her will. When my commanding officer was executed by Malvina in the Circle of Equals over a minor issue, I knew I could not fight for her. I could only fight for the clan. I volunteered to stay behind to care for a Sibco group not yet old enough to fight. The clan moved on without me," Vasil said, his stone-gray eyes never leaving the dropship. Tenica and Ryn looked at each other, and even though Ryn shook her head, Tenica asked anyway, "What happened to the Sibco?" Vasil sighed slowly before responding. "Clan Hell's horses happened, and I failed to protect them. I attempted to do the honorable thing and die in battle, as all Jade Falcons should, but it appears that fate had other plans for me. I am without a clan, a home, or a mission." It was nearly a full minute before anyone spoke again. Tenica nodded at Ryn, and with an unspoken approval, Ryn said, "We can't offer you a clan, but we could offer you a home and a mission." Vasil looked down at the two of them, his face stoic and without a hint of emotion. Ryn thought that he was about to turn and walk away, but instead he said, "Someone should keep you two out of trouble." With repairs nearly complete, Ryn dealt with Reese's underlings and squabbled over prices, while Vasil and Tenica collected his gear from the storage locker. When the door slid open, Tenica was surprised to see just a few personal possessions scattered around a simple cabin that was dominated by the presence of a clan invasion-era elemental battlesuit. It was scuffed, worn, and showed the fact that it was more than 100 years old. Tenica took in the sight of each part as Vasil stepped into it and began to apply each piece of armor, locking it into place. When he put on the last piece over his head, Tenica could see the remnants of a painted green falcon that had been worn almost completely away. She grabbed his rucksack and tossed it over her shoulder. "Ready to go?" Tenica asked. Through the battle armor's external speakers, Vasil's voice replied, "Let us go explore." Explorer Corps, First Arm, Spinward Operations Area, Antalos System, Nadir Jump Point, November 10th, 3151. Cal Levitt tapped the holotable top a few times to make sure what he was seeing wasn't a figment of a glitched system. Sure enough, the 5 little lights continued to move up behind the rabbit's foot on a trajectory that would take them up alongside the hull. "All right, we're on, folks. This isn't a drill. Do not let them secure to the hull." He tapped the mic on his collar and announced an incoming boarding action across the ship. Kip and Ariana were already in their fighters and on their way out of the ship's launching bay. Mechwarriors Akif and Olivia were on their way out onto the hull with their mechs, and May should be out in her commando in less than 2 minutes. Cal glanced over at his tablet, waiting for a response from his message to Ryn warning her of the assault on the jump ship. However, there was no response. From the angle of approach, most of the jump ship's guns wouldn't be able to target the incoming craft. It would be up to the Mechwarriors and the Holts to keep them from latching on. The expedition couldn't afford a deck-by-deck fight for control of the ship. There was no money in the budget to pay for mercenary marines to loaf around on board in case they were needed. The best they could do was lock down bulkheads and clear away the means to escape for these pirates. Then maybe the pirates could be delayed until Ryn shows up with backup. If she ever did return with backup. He glanced again down at the tablet. Nothing. Kip and Ariana Holt streaked out of the launch bay, banking hard and heading toward the small craft rapidly approaching the jump ship. In her corax, a light fighter armed with a large pulse laser backed up with 2 medium lasers, Ariana quickly scanned for the closest target. Her father flew farther behind, taking aim with his ER large lasers and ER PPC. Designating targets 1 through 5, one on your right coming in fast, Ariana said, lining up her shot on the closest craft. At this distance, they were still hard to see, possibly due to being painted black with some sort of IR-absorbing paint. The lock was weak, but it was what she had. She squeezed the trigger, and the large pulse laser thumped its comforting cadence through the frame of the corax. The laser covered the distance nearly instantly at that range, but instead of getting a firm hit, the laser seemed to diffuse and refract in a dozen different directions. Kip backed her up with both ER large lasers and the ER PPC shot at the same time. Though the lasers seemed to also diffuse and lose their power, the ER PPC cut through whatever was in front of the ships and ripped into the hull of the craft. Torn like paper, the ship spilled its contents of pirates and their gear into open space. As both aerospace fighters flew past the remnants, the machines spewing reflective metal material from the front of the craft explained the laser's ineffectiveness. "We're going to need to hit them from the sides and aft, Ari," Kip said, reversing his thrusters and pulling the nose of the Stingray around to the nearest target. On the hull of the Rabbit's Foot, Akif and Olivia locked onto the next closest target after seeing the first craft break apart. Olivia's Thunderbolt was an intimidating presence on the battlefield, but standing on the spine of the jump ship, it looked quite small. As the closest ship came into range, Olivia lined up her shot and fired her mech's ER PPC and ER medium lasers. While once again the lasers had trouble penetrating the screen in front of these ships, the ER PPC gouged a significant chunk out of the pirate vessel. Akif followed up with his Calliope's plasma rifle, which had no problem burning through the chaff and then searing its way into the remaining armor of the ship. It continued to travel forward due to momentum, but the ship began to roll, head over tail, out of control. "Call that one good. Move on to target 3. Olivia coolly spoke into the comms as she turned the Dark Age refit Thunderbolt and lined up for the next shot. The Holts clipped a third ship off course, and the impact of another PPC blast following laser strikes left 2 vessels on the intercept course. The previously hit tumbling ship twisted away from the jump ship, but shots from the mechs missed number 4. It slid past the jump ship on the side away from the mechs, latching onto the outer surface with maglocks. The 5th ship buzzed the mechs and seemed to continually narrowly avoid the incoming fire. The Holts had to peel their aerofighters off into a holding pattern rather than risk hitting the ship with their fire. Both Akif and Olivia started the slow march toward the vessel that rolled and then maglocked itself to the jump ship's hull. Inside the ship, Cal Levitt turned off the magnets on his boots and boosted off the wall with the needler in his hands. As he coasted down the hallway, that would take him down to where the sensors were showing that the pirates were cutting through the hull. Several techs holding their own laser pistols joined him, as a second team was sent to make sure bulkhead doors were locked and jammed shut further back in the ship where the first vessel had attached. They didn't have enough guns for a single boarding action, let alone 2. Reaching the door to the storage area, Levitt checked his tablet and contacted the bridge for confirmation. "Bulkhead 34E, 4th rib, correct?" Levitt asked. "Affirmative, sir. Sensors suggest at least a dozen pirates are in there, moving gear within that room." Levitt pulled a flashbang grenade from his pack on the side and pulled the pin. He looked at the 2 nervous techs with him and nodded, hitting the door release and tossing the grenade inside. The Calliope reached the partially crashed ship first, using its left hand to grip it, and began to peel back armor plating. Akif was angry at this point, with the presumption of these pirates, and he planned on venting them out into space. Olivia's Thunderbolt arrived moments later, just in time to see the Calliope tearing into the ship, which started to vent atmosphere into space, including gear and a pirate who tumbled head over heels past Akif's cockpit. It didn't faze him as he pulled the ship apart. Several more pirates were suddenly without air, but it appeared that most were able to get into the Rabbit's Foot. "Lieutenant Levitt, we did what we could here, but there are an unknown quantity of pirates inside. Their ship is toast, though," Olivia spoke into the comm line, feeling Akif's frustration as he continued to stand his mech over the ruined pirate vessel. The comlink did not return a response. Rounds bounced off the bulkhead as the pirates exchanged fire with Levitt and the techs through the partially open door. The initial flashbang resulted in a lot of yelling and a hail of gunfire through the door, which prevented entry. Levitt could hear sporadic voices over the comm, but the gunfire was making deciphering it impossible. He considered using a high-explosive grenade from his pack, but with the already compromised hull in the room, he risked depressurizing that section of the ship. He thought to himself how he'd become really accustomed to breathing over the years, and quite preferred it over a vacuum. A bullet bounced off the bulkhead and smacked his hand, refocusing his efforts. He poked the barrel of his needler pistol into the room and blind-fired inside. "We're toast," Levitt said, just before the door to the cabin exploded inward, to shower Levitt and the techs with debris from inside the room, blown outward back into the hallway. Levitt's ears were ringing, and he couldn't see much from the smoke and the dust in the air. He realized he dropped his pistol and looked around on the ground for it, only to feel the rapid, heavy thud through the decking. Thud, 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 thud. Looking up, his eyes went wide in shock as the battle-armored soldier ran past him and into the room. In only a fraction of a second, Levitt went from expecting to die gruesomely to feeling relief to feeling empathy for the anguished screams coming from inside the room. Gunfire continued, then gradually dwindled. When Levitt looked into the room, the figure wearing the battle armor was standing in the middle of the room. The claw that made up its left hand was firmly gripping the collar of a pirate who was no longer in one piece. Finally, there was silence, and Levitt could begin to hear through the comlink as the ringing in his ears abated. It was Ryn's voice, demanding a report. There was gunfire in the background, and Levitt was called into action. Quickly rising, helping the techs to their feet and grabbing the needler pistol. As they started to head down the hallway to the location of the other pirate intrusion, the elemental came up behind them. "Excuse me," it said through its external speakers, running past the crew at full speed, only to turn on a dime at the end of the hall, far more gracefully than it had any right to. "Who the hell is that in the frog suit?" Levitt asked over the comm. "Oh, Tanaka made a new friend," came Ryn's reply. End Part 3. Thanks for watching. If you are enjoying the story and want more, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next part in this series. Big thanks to the Ko-Fi supporters who are keeping this venture running. Take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.